This edition of the West Tigers podcast is brought to you by The Ambush. The next Ambush event will take place in round 6 when the West Tigers take on St George Illawarra Dragons in Campbelltown. And that event will take place at the Beer Shed, just a short walk from the ground. And don't forget, a limited number of seats are still available for our Bathurst road trip. Join us for a luxury coach trip across the Blue Mountains to see the West Tigers in action against the Panthers. You can find out more details on that on the West Tigers podcast website, westtigerspodcast.com.au. And return adult tickets at just $40, $30 for children and pensioners.
Galvin, who takes over here, it will be the young fella running up to the line, inside to Buller. Buller's pass, superb! Great try, Tigers! Sam Fadu has a try in first grade. Quick play the ball, carousel for the Tigers. I don't know. He's claiming it. The ball rolled loose. The Tigers, bang, bang, and they're back.
Hello and welcome to the West Tigers podcast. This is episode number 309. We've got a truncated team tonight, just me and Steve, Eddie and Steve. Steve, Gary wants us to do a 9-hour podcast because he is driving back, I believe, from Melbourne to Sydney on a work mission, returning from a work mission. But the problem with that is we probably need Gary to do a 9-hour podcast.
Absolutely. Do we need Gary? But the funny thing about that is a 9-hour pod, he wouldn't need us.
That's probably true, Steve. And Joel is back, so good news. He's back in the country. He was keen actually to record tonight, but it just didn't quite line up with our timeline, Steve. He wanted to record in the middle of the grand final replay, so we've opted to brush him tonight and go ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watching this game later tonight, which by the time everyone hears this will be last night. If that makes sense.
Now, Steve, we went on Sunday night, and it was definitely a good thing that I wasn't on because I was ranting and raving as usual, as I'm sure you painfully have to put up with in that group chat. But Gary and Declan and Kelly were on. So I won't get you one word for the Canberra game. I want to get your one word just for this upcoming Cronulla game. What are you settled on?
Well, my one word is Leichhardt, because Leichhardt Oval's been in the news this week, and whether this is a political ploy to try to get funding for the Oval, or whether there's reality to the situation that West Council have said 2 more years and then Leichhardt's closed for business. That is going to hit a nerve with so many people. I know how much you love Leichhardt Oval. I love Leichhardt Oval, and I've told the story quite openly and honestly of when I walk over that back hill and see the ground before me, it can bring a tear to my eye. I'm just so invested in that ground. I've been going to that ground for as long as I can remember. And for it not to be part of my life and the life of many others and West Tigers, it's really sad. So my hope is that because of what was said through the week, that these players think about Leichhardt Oval and what it means to the fans that have followed the Tigers at Leichhardt Oval for so many years and play a game worthy of that emotion.
Yeah, I reckon I've only missed a couple of Leichhardt games since the 2 clubs merged. And like you said, it's one of those grounds. It's close to home for me. I only live probably 5-minute drive away. They still, believe it or not, Steve, we still hold an above 50% win rate at Leichhardt Oval. Now, I'm sure over the last decade it's been probably closer to 35 or 40%, but it shows what a true home ground advantage it was, at least in that first decade. But interesting, I haven't followed the news that close this week because it seems every year there's news about Leichhardt Oval and this is going to be the last year and so. But you think it might be a little bit more serious this time?
Oh, I don't know, Eddie. Honestly, it's a guess. Like, there's every chance it's a political stunt, and not a bad one, to try to get more funding, to get attention to the fact that the ground needs funding. But that is the bottom line. As much as I love the place, we can't continue to call that our home unless there is massive upgrade to the whole thing. I had a look at Brookvale the other day. They had a camera up high, almost looked like from a helicopter or something, right? And the improvements that have been made to that ground as a suburban ground are just fantastic, right? And that's what Leichhardt needs, as does Campbelltown, really. But if we're going to keep those two grounds, and we're going to open a debate again here, if we're going to keep those two grounds, as everyone has said many, many times, we need lots of upgrade.
No, I think they were in the right political sort of area, right time and place for Brookvale. Or maybe that's something that Leichhardt needs. There's always politics with getting grants for grounds. But it's interesting with even the Sharks, Steve. I know it's a different case because I believe they own their ground and they're building a stack of apartments, but their capacity I saw on the weekend was about 12,000. So I don't know how sustainable having 12,000 crowds are there.
Yeah, well, they've gone for that niche boutique stadium look, and they've done a good job, Cronulla. I don't pretend to know a lot about it, but you just mentioned it, that they've taken what used to be the warm-up area and the car park and turned it into real estate for themselves, and that's just must have shored the club up for decades to come. And I know the NRL have been doing that, apparently, have been buying up real estate and getting asset rich, and it's a smart way to go. And this is the business that is, upon us today. We're not just in the era of footy clubs selling meat trays at a pub on Friday night. You've got to think creatively. And we talk about the massive change that the West Tigers are undergoing. Hopefully at a corporate level and at a financial level, we're able to forge ahead financially as well.
That's one memory I have as a kid from Leichhardt is getting mum or dad to get, I think it was those doubles on the main game tickets on the hill.
Yeah.
Cost a couple of dollars and you get it, you scratch it out and there are a couple of numbers and, if you got the 2 and the 5, you're thinking, I might win this, but sometimes you get the 12 and the 10.
Mate, I won that. $50 for 50 cents. I won that, and you went round the back of the Keith Barnes stand at halftime of first grade to pick up your winnings, and I ran. I don't think I even stayed for the rest of the game. I was so excited having $50 in my kick. I ran all the way from Leichhardt Oval through Callan Park to Victoria Road to get the bus. I didn't want to stop in case someone pinched me $50. I remember that as playing. I was pretty young though. I was probably only 23, 24. No, I was only about 13, 14. But I remember. And the other thing I remember is the bloke that used to walk around the ground selling nuts, and it was either in the shell or sugar coated.
Remember that? Was that late 80s, early 90s?
Oh, well, that would have been. I'd have been really, really young, mate. So yeah, I'd say mid 80s, right? Mid 80s that would have been. And yeah, I used to love that. I'd get there and get my peanuts in the shell and crack them open and put them everywhere and make a mess. It's great memories of like that.
My one word, Steve, was aggression, because I just didn't see anything against Canberra. And I know it was the first game of the year, but I was just disappointed, especially that first 15 minutes. I just thought they got their wake-up call against St George. There was no intensity. I know, and you were right, I think. Benji referred to the fact that because they had the round one bye, they had been flogged at training. So I was sort of feeling a bit optimistic, and I tipped us to win on last week's podcast. And then I just thought that first 15 minutes, I know Canberra came out hard, but I just thought there was a lack of aggression, a lack of intent, especially from those senior players on the side.
Yeah, but mate, if I'd given my grandmother 9-1 in the first 15 minutes of the game, a touch in our backyard, she'd come out hard too, right? And she'd be on top. Like, I'm going to be a little tougher than the love fest that was Declan, Gary, and Kelly the other night.
I was going to say, Declan's become this very philosophical, sort of everything's good. We get plenty of positives. I mean, when we used to lose a game under Madge, and we lost a lot of games under Madge, but not at this rate over the last 3 years, he used to be apoplectic about it.
Yeah, absolutely. They were holding hands and saying he's going to be okay. But, it was a little bit. I'm sure we'll hear more about this in the coming pods. But anyway, I agree with you. The first 15, and the reason it was like that, Eddie, is because what I just said, 9-1, the mistakes, and not just drop ball and penalties, but ruck infringements, like really silly stuff. Continue getting 6 again after 6 again. And I reckon that first 20 minutes was summed up by Bateman, like our vice captain, one of our senior players, and Kelly said it right on the pod the other night when she said the guys that stood up were our rookies, not our experienced players. He doesn't get back on the line. He doesn't get square at marker, and yet he jumps out and slaps
That was like
halves.
a penalty you see in the schoolyard in year 6. That was deliberate, and that was just silly.
And it just summed up our first 20 minutes. It was dumb football and absolutely no discipline. Who of all the teams in the NRL, you give a forward pack like the Raiders 9 sets to 1. That's it, mate. It's game over.
Yeah, well, it was 14-0. We did get back to 14-12, but you're always chasing your tail because you have to, front load your energy just to get back to 14-12. And I got to be honest, Steve, I was at cricket and I watched that first 15 minutes and I was sort of drifting in and out of the game on my phone since then. But there were positives. The young fella I thought was just outstanding for his first game, Lockie Galvin. And I think it was Declan that said on the podcast, he has a real presence about him. And by the second half, he was completely running that team. And I don't know whether that says more about him or more about Jaden Sullivan, but I know there were a couple of mistakes, but who cares? I thought he was outstanding.
Yeah, I think it gets overused a little bit this term, but he's a real footballer. He just knows the game and seems to know what move to put on, what play to put on at the right time. And he's obviously just going to get better and better. I don't think it'll be without its pitfalls this year. I think he'll struggle. He's a young kid and he's got the world on his shoulders really playing 6 for the Tigers. So I think he'll play a few good games and I think he'll get pretty tired pretty quickly. And I would say the coaching staff are going to need to manage him fairly cautiously. But in saying that, maybe he won't. Maybe he will just bloom and go. But the thing that he needs help around him. But you are right, Eddie. Like, they did come back, and that was the positive out of that game. Like that try that they put on for Fiona was a really good try set up by that was Buller and Galvin, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then Appy had a dummy half, driving forward. That was good, but we were never going to win that game after 20 minutes. No way.
I listened to his interview after the game, Galvin. I think it was with an in-house one with Chris Warren, and he's just it's like the innocence of youth. You can tell he's got no scars, and that's something that I'd love to see 3 or 4 guys sort of emerge. Like you said, he's probably been winning football games his whole life, and I just worry with some of our guys that have been around for a little while that they're just sort of scarred by being at this club the past couple of years and all the noise that it attracts and so on and so on. I just saw that kid's interview after the game and, he looked like he was ready to go and play another game.
Well, you can sort of draw a line down the middle of our team, I reckon. Now, you look at our forward pack with Clemmer and Stefano in the front row with Appy as rake, then Bateman and Papali'i in the back row.
A lot of money invested there, Steve.
There's a lot of experience, right? A lot of guys that have been around the traps and know what first grade football's all about. Now, if you just draw a line there, then go into the backs and look at Buller and Fatape and Tupou to an extent and Galvin. These are the young kids that have got something about them, right? Fainu when he gets on the field, they've got something about them, and it looks like there's some promise there. But we need these other blokes to really assert themselves and play beyond what they're playing at the moment and play to the level of experience that they've got. And then I'm going to go back to what I said, and people will laugh at this, but if they were to do that, we have a capable football side, and I maintain that.
Okay.
But not if they don't do it, because the young guys are going to get smashed in a month.
What's a little bit of news today about another youngster, probably might be 18 months away, they reckon, Hamasi Makasini, who is catching the attention of everyone, it seems. One of the West Magpies, Harold Matthews stars, apparently, scored 6 tries and 20 goals in, I think, the last 5 games, played under 16 Australian rugby union team. He's already training with the top squad, apparently, and sat down with Shane Richardson and Benji to meet during the week. So, he's probably not going to debut this year, Steve, but that's the sort of thing win. It reminds me of that sort of 03 to 05 time when, Bronson Harrison, Robbie Farah, Dean Hallertau, Liam Fulton, Benji Marshall all sort of came at the same time, and they were coming into a losing club that hadn't had any success, and they didn't show any scars. And I just think rather than relying on someone like Luai next year, as big a name as he is, we've seen so many big names come in here and not all struggle. Like Appy was really good last year, but he took us from last to last. So I mean, Luai might be really good, so and take us nowhere. So I just think this pathways and development, hopefully it's starting to, come to fruition, even though it's going to be something, gradual.
There are absolutely shoots there. You look at that combination with Galvin and Buller and Fainu the other day. Yeah, that's got so much potential. You look at bringing in Jerome Luai. You look at the fact we've got one of the best hookers in the game. There are absolutely green shoots, but all these things need to come together, and they all need to work together. Like, you can't just be a development club where you can't just go out and get the latest rock star into your team. It's got to all work together. And I suppose this is the point I just made before, mate, is that we've got a decent forward pack that need to work with these young guys, and if they work together, then perhaps we can build something. But if our forward pack don't do the work and our young guys are exposed, they are going to get smashed, and they're going to become what you said. It's going to be like Brooks and Moses and Tedesco back in the day, right? They were the same. They were the next crop through, but they got smashed.
Yeah,
they had no support.
Yeah, my next little sub point here was who needs to lift, Steve. But I think we've sort of covered it there. Is we're looking at some of those forwards. I know it's only one game in, but I even thought probably the back half of last year, Clemmer, Bateman, and Ice dropped off. Particularly Clemmer and Bateman. I thought they were really strong in the first half of the year. I think Ice was probably a little bit up and down the whole season, but I don't know what it is, but I don't think there's excuses there. I think they're experienced enough and they're getting paid enough to be doing a better job, and particularly in that first 25 minutes against a physical side like Cronulla, they're the guys that are going to, keep us in this game.
We saw it in the very first trial in that first 25 minutes against the Warriors. Clemmer and Stefano were right up tight with Appy. They were getting onto the ball, getting over the ad line, beating the defence to the ad line, and were making good yardage. Papali'i in that first game, if my memory serves me right, was coming in to the middle, off his edge, and doing a lot of hard work, and was effective on the edge as well. But then it just stopped. I know we've only played one game, right? So, we're going off a bit early, and it might turn around. But they've just got to get quicker, play the ball. They've got to be at Appy much quicker so we can get good flat ball to them, so they can get over that ad line and get the defence retreating. Because I'm sure we'll get to this. I might be jumping ahead here. You look at the back line that Cronulla put on the park.
Red hot, isn't it? Red hot.
Oh, mate, it is red hot. And if we don't win the forward battle and get them, and if they get momentum, it'll be a cricket score.
Yeah, it is difficult to sort of read into some of their stats, Steve, because like you said, 9 sets to 1. So after 20 minutes, I think David Clemmer would have had one run. It's not because of his bludging. It's because we were defending the whole time. But it's sort of that attention to detail that you stressed in the last couple of years. That first set, I think it might have been Fatape and just a lazy pass to Sullivan, and all of a sudden the kicks. I was so disappointed in Jaden Sullivan. I just thought, at the very least, even if he had a poor game, show that you want that job. I just didn't see anything in his body language that showed he was confident or that he wanted it. And maybe I'm being harsh, and I know that one defensive thing looked particularly bad, but just his whole game, like, he allowed himself to sort of have an 18-year-old call the shots. I was just so disappointed with his performance.
Yeah, it's almost as if there's absolutely no resilience, and when things start to go bad, that they don't have the capacity mentally to turn it around and really bite down the mouth guard and say, screw this, I'm going to make this work. It's like it just compounds itself in their head, and they become really scared to have a go, and then that's when they drift out of games. And that's what he did on the weekend. He didn't look at all confident with anything he was doing. I don't know how you address that. I think we've got to have a little bit of luck. We've got to have a couple of things go our way, get a lucky win, and have the confidence build, and then the skills that they've got will come to the fore through confidence, maybe.
All right, well, let's preview the game itself, Steve. Saturday, 7:30, Leichhardt Oval. Expecting a pretty big crowd. Gary texts that the numbers weren't looking so good, but my theory for Leichhardt, Steve, is all depends on the weather, because you get fans that just roll up there. I'm not sure, that they're out buying tickets on a Tuesday or Wednesday, but if the weather's nice, you'd expect a pretty healthy crowd against a side like Cronulla, which will bring some fans themselves.
Yeah, I think if it's a nice day at Leichhardt Oval early in the season, hopefully we'll get to 14,000. I don't think we're going to get a sellout at Leichhardt. We're just not playing well enough and haven't played well enough for a long time. I think we've lost a lot of goodwill from the occasional fan, So if they can get 14,000, I think that'd be a pretty good effort.
I thought he got his team this week close to right. There were question marks last week about why Aidan Sezer was on the bench, but he's rectified that this week straight away. I know it's one game for Jayden Sullivan, but I think that's a move he had to make.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Sezer coming in, that will be good for Galvin. I think it'll be good for the side. And Cesar's job really is no nonsense. Just run the team.
One thing when he came on, Steve, he might have given away a penalty or something, but vocally he was in the game straight away. In 5 minutes, I noticed a presence for him that I didn't see from Sullivan throughout the whole half.
No, and they need that. They need that vocal presence out there, because Buller is still learning about that, and we've talked about that before. So you're not getting a lot of talk from back, I would say. I think having Olam there will increase the talk as well with the experience. I'm interested to note that Naden is on the extended bench, right? So I'm just wondering if they haven't given up hope that he'll actually be right for the game and might be a late call up. I don't know. That might be just wishful thinking. But why would he be in the 21?
I think looking at that back line at the moment, Steve, it's not like anyone outside Buller is sort of locked in their spot. Who would you think Naden might come in for? Obviously, if Olam's fit, he's going to play, because he's same thing. He's got a presence about him. He's experienced. Okay, he's had his issues with injuries and stuff, but our wingers again have offered nothing, and I don't know whether they're just totally out of form or whether we're not getting good field position. But at the moment, Staines and Tupou don't look like the players they were at times last year.
No, I think if he is in fact just, we're waiting to see if his injury is right to go, I think he'll be a straight swap for Tape. He's got potential, but he's still defensively, I think, fairly raw. But I would consider, now I don't know whether this will work or not, but I would consider bringing Naden in actually on the wing for either Staines or Tupou, because I think both of them have been dreadful, nothing short of dreadful. It will be better this week with Olam starting the sets, but they have offered next to nothing. So
I'll be fair, because Gary's been on me about this. I thought Alex Seyfarth was really poor last week, and I said to Gary I maybe give him one more chance, but I can't argue with Fanua-Pole coming on into that lock position. He definitely added a bit of aggression when he came on from the bench last week.
Yeah, I agree with the argument that the guys were saying the other night in the pod about, why wouldn't you give Matamua a go at lock and then just use Pole in the prop rotation? I don't know that. I haven't watched Matamua enough for a fair while now. But yeah, Pole, three props on the field. Forget the fact that we need a creative option at 13. If you've got Stefano Clemmer and Pole on the field to start, you would hope we're going to get some starch in our defence, and we're going to get some drive forward through the ruck. So I'm not against that. I am not really happy with Seyfarth and Twal on the bench. Twal, I don't mind. Twal, we know what Twal's going to do. He's going to come on and do a job, and he'll do it really well. But I just think when you look at their bench, they've got, Finucane sitting there to come off the bench after 25 minutes. And Seafarth, right? It's that's a bit of a worry if you want to maintain momentum through that back end of the first half.
It's probably a left field idea, although we did do it in the past, Steve. I just thought looking, and I tend to agree with you, and Gary definitely raised it when the side was named at 4:00, that he looked at the bench and saw Sullivan, Twal, Seyfarth, and Fainu, and said there's a lack of size and impact there. And I thought maybe, Alex Twal for me is the same player whether he starts or whether he's on the bench. And I thought to unlock maybe someone like Stefano. I know it's probably going to give him shits, so that's not a good thing given there's a little bit of speculation about his contract. But I just think, if Klemmer and Twal could hold the opening 20 minutes, then Stefano could cause havoc, that sort of player off the bench. I just often think his first stints are underwhelming compared to his second stints.
Look, I think he's had a relatively slow start to the season, Stefano, so mixing it up might work, but I've got to say, I just like a team to start strong. If we get on the back foot early in this game with what's happened last week, what happened in the trial against St George, and what happened for the last couple of years, we're just going to drop our bundle. We haven't shown. How long has it been since we've shown an ability to come back from adversity? So we can't risk adversity at the beginning of a game. So I think we've got to go with our strongest.
Yeah. No, it's like that round one last year when I think we thought let's bring Appy off the bench, and by the time he came on with 12-0 down, and you're chasing your tail.
That's right. But you're right. Like the only impact off that bench is Fainu. That is the only impact.
That Shark backline, I'm just going to read, and let's be honest here, Steve, I'm going to read the sort of matchups, and you tell me, if it was a combined team between the Tigers and the Sharks, who would you take? Gary disputes one of these. William Kennedy or Buller?
Kennedy just by a whisker.
Matalino or Charlie Staines? Ronaldo, that is.
Mulatalo.
Mulatalo. What did I call him? Ben Matalino, did I?
Yeah. We could try Matalino on the wing. Probably start our sets off okay. But Mulatalo by.
He's actually one of my favourite players, Steve, and because he winds up people. You wonder why he's one of my favourite players. He'll try and wind up the Leichhardt crowd, but I think he's a character. I quite like him. He's a good footballer as well. And then they've got Jesse Ramey and Talakai in the centres. They've got Katoa. Trindle is the 5'8", so I would argue I would prefer Galvin over Trindle just based on long term. And Nico Hines, I think he's a super halfback at Cronulla.
I think he's a super player, Nico Hines, but I think he can be got at.
Okay.
And
how?
And I think put him under pressure, and I think he struggles a little bit when things don't go to plan for him. I think sometimes he lacks that. What I said earlier, he lacks that little bit of resilience or how to fight back into a game when it hasn't quite gone his way. So I'm probably clutching at straws, but if I was putting a game plan together, one, it'd be to win the forward battle, obviously, but after that, I'd be saying pressure him all game, all day, hit him hard, hit him as often as you can, try to put him off his game, and I think that link from the ruck to that super backline, if he's off his game, it might help us.
Prediction time for the game, Steve. I'm not going to be as optimistic as last week. I'm going to say 26-16 Sharks. But for me, I know Gary thinks I'm negative after every loss, but I just want to see that intent. I know most weeks we're going to be outgunned in terms of you go through the lineups themselves. They've got more class, they got more power, more speed than us. But I was disappointed in the intent against Canberra, particularly from the start. And if we go down and we're level at halftime and they end up scoring a couple of late tries, I can probably live with that. But I can't live with the start that we had against Canberra.
No, I agree with you 100%. And that's why, I've sort of come in fairly strong tonight, I suppose, with that last week's effort. I just think it's hopeless, considering how much there was to play for.
Well, my word was not NRL standard club. I think Declan left out the last word, which made it a little bit sound like I was talking about that performance in itself, but more just summarising the last 2 or 3 years and just how far. I just get a bit worried, Steve. Like I've watched quite a fair bit of the games this year, and even the side sort of down the bottom, or who I think are going to be down the bottom, like maybe the Bulldogs and the Dragons, they've shown something so far. And we've only had one game, so I guess I'm being a bit unfair. Some teams have had two. But I just want us to show something this week outside of the young kid who did certainly show something last week.
Yeah, we need to bounce back this week. That was going to be my word. I thought Leichhardt was sort of the one, but
let's do. Sorry, mate. Let's do.
No, I was going to say bounce back's important for us this week.
Let's do quick tips for this round whilst I get up Yachty's quiz, and I'm just going to read out Yachty's quiz, and I might read the answers at the end. So it's just for our listeners tonight. Grand final rematch in about half an hour, Steve. Who's going to win?
Yeah, I'm going to say Brisbane. I'm really on Brisbane. I just think they're a great football side. They do things at such pace. I'm not saying Penrith aren't. Penrith are.
Yeah.
Penrith are, but I think Penrith might just be over the. They've hit the top and they're just on the other side a little bit, I think.
Warriors Canberra in Auckland. Tough one. Warriors 0-2, believe it or not.
Yeah, that is a hard one because Canberra. If Canberra play the way they did last week, like they completed very high, at a high rate. No, I'm still going to go Warriors at home.
Yeah, I think desperation there. 0-2 Warriors. They'll win that at home. Roosters Rabbitohs. Most boring rivalry in the game, Steve. Everyone goes on about this rivalry. I get bored of it. I think Roosters will crush the Rabbitohs. I think they've got a few issues, South.
So when I give my tip here, do I swear or do I do it without swear words?
You can say whatever you like, Steve, on our podcast. There's no beef in it.
I reckon the Roosters.
Bulldogs Titans, they're playing at Belmore. I think Canterbury will win, actually. I thought they were all right against Cronulla last week.
Yeah, same.
Dragons Cowboys at Jubilee. I'd be wary of that one. Dragons often play well at Cobram.
Can't go past last week, though. I've got a tip Cowboys.
Parramatta and your second team, Steve, Manly. They're red hot at the moment. Luke Brooks and even Tommy Talau looked good before he got injured last week.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from Manly. I'll go Manly on that one.
Shocked me. Newcastle, Melbourne. And Jackson Hastings dropped, Steve. He it's interesting. There's always a bit of like speculation on why he got dropped, but there's nothing concrete about he's upset this person or that person. I just think personally it's probably his form. I was watching him sort of closely the back end of last year, and he wasn't a big part of that winning streak. He missed a few games and he looked quite slow, and I think, you know, him and Cogger are obviously sort of similar players. So they've kept Gamble and they've flicked Hastings, which he's obviously none too happy about.
That's a great point you make, Eddie. And someone mentioned it earlier in the week, and I hadn't thought of it. He wasn't part of that huge run last year, right? So,
no, he was in and out of it. I actually stole that point off Aaron Woods mentioned it because everyone was saying, well, they went on that 10-game winning streak, but I think he missed 3 or 4 of those games and even had to come off in a couple.
Yeah, no, but Melbourne will get it. Melbourne will win the game, I think, but they could be in a spot above the 2 Melbourne. The word is that Munster's injury is a pretty bad one. So there's something that's just happened today. There's some leaked audio from a podcast that was they didn't press the stop button end of the podcast, and it's Cameron Smith saying that Munster's gone. He can hardly walk, and he's not going to be back for weeks and weeks and weeks. So
that's the first mistake. First mistake to come out of Melbourne in 20 years, Steve.
Yeah, that's right.
Bellamy will be furious. All right, mate, let's read out this trivia. I won't ask you for the answers, but I'll give it for our listeners anyway. Question 1 this week. Which of these West Tigers players did not score a hat-trick against the Sharks? A, Robbie Farah, B, Bo Ryan, C, Scott Prince, or D, Troy Wozniak? I can tell you because I remember it. I was at a game in 2001 or 2, and I'm sure Troy Wozniak scored a hat-trick. It was at Shark Park, so it's not him. Who did it?
Logic would say, why would you put Troy Wozniak
exactly
in the ABCD if he hadn't done it? I'll say Prince.
Bo Ryan, I think it was. Question 2 is in Tim Sheen's 2 coaching stints, how many games did he win and lose against Cronulla out of 16? So out of 16, Steve, I'll give you a little bit of a clue. No, I won't give you a clue, actually, because that'll give it away. But it was one of the, I reckon, at one point against Cronulla, we didn't lose for about 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, we like that. They were like our bunnies there for a long time. So I would say I'll go 10-6 in favour.
Even better, 13 wins, 3 losses, and I assume one of those losses was probably last year. In relation to Declan, I don't know why he said this. It's the first time I've read it, Yachty, so don't blame me if I get it wrong. Name the 8 West Tigers players whose surnames start with Merk. So I'll give you one of them. I'm not going to ask you. I'm going to give the viewers. It's Kevin McGuinness. Name the 7 others. We'll start with an MC at the. Speaking of MC, Steve, we've only got 2 minutes left on this, but I saw on the West Tigers website they've signed a deal with McDonald's. So, I mean, that's a fairly big brand name. McDonald's, I don't know how much they're giving him, but they're on the goalpost and they're obviously a match day sponsor. So maybe Shane Richardson starting to work his magic already.
Yeah, well, it's only good news when you get a brand like McDonald's supporting you. So good on Shane Richardson.
Last one, who am I? It was round 1 in 2012. We were the premiership favourites hosting the Sharks at Leichhardt. I was there. The match was played in quarters due to the sweltering heat. Cronulla were up 16-12 with 4 minutes remaining. Thankfully, a Bo Ryan kick and regather saved the day, made it 16-all. Game went to Golden Point. Benji Marshall kicked a field goal. A player by the name of James Tedesco made his NRL debut that day. Unluckily, he tore his ACL. Subsequently, who was he replaced by? That is the question, and I will give the answer in about 30 seconds. Steve, you're going to have no idea because I don't even remember this player. I remember the name, but you're not going to be at Leichhardt this week. You're going to be in Byron on the couch, I assume. Are you going to throw a tantrum if we're 12-0 down and turn it off, or are you going to stick it out for the 80 minutes?
No, it's still March, so I'll stick it out. I usually don't get into go for a walk around the block territory till April at least. But okay. I'm not confident.
All right. The answer, Steve, was Tom Humble. Born in Brisbane 1988, 6 games for Parramatta, 15 games for West Tigers. Tim Sheens described him as the ultimate utility. Didn't Tim Sheens love a utility, Steve?
Household name, Tom Humble.
All right, Steve. Thanks for tonight. I can't promise I'll be on Sunday night because if we lose, you know what I'm like Sundays. So hopefully you'll be on maybe with Gary and Declan and Kelly in the Love Fest podcast where we can all be positive and fluffy about things.
It'll be a Northern Rivers loving.
Okay, thank you, Steve.